Hello, good morning or afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this second day of QBHub Qiskit Fall Fest 2025. Today we have many interesting presentations that will expand your knowledge of quantum computing. We hope you had a great start yesterday and get ready for an intense day of learning, networking, and lots of quantum inspiration. Don't forget to take full advantage of the opportunity to interact with your experts and get all your questions answered. Our first expert is Tabitha Champeau. Tabitha Champeau is a cybersecurity and networks student with hands-on experience in IT infrastructure and security, including work with the Cisco Dream Team. She's passionate about advancing collaboration between disciplines to make quantum technologies practical, scalable, and secure.
Okay. Can you hear
Yes,
me now?
yes, can hear you.
Wonderful.
Okay, este, uh, I continue lecture your view. Okay. And he's going to share his topic where quantum meets the network, building the hybrid future of computing together. The abstract of his presentation is as follows: Quantum and classical computing aren't rivals, they are partners. This session explored how both communities can work together to build systems that make quantum computing practical and secure for networking and security students. It highlights how their skills form the backbone of future quantum infrastructure. For quantum students, it shows why understanding networks, system design, and security will be critical for scaling beyond the lab. Together, we will unpack how hybrid architectures built through collaboration across disciplines are shaping the next generation of technology. Welcome, Tabitha. Thank you for joining us today. And let's proceed.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm just going to go ahead and share. Okay. Can you all see?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. Perfect. All right. So, as I was so lovingly introduced, my name is Tabitha Champeau. I'm an undergraduate student at SUNY Rockland Community College. I'm currently studying IT networking and cybersecurity, but I have a uh, very strong passion for all things quantum. And um, before I even learned about quantum, honestly, um, I got another degree in, of all things, anthropology at Bucknell University. And I honed those skills and took them with me to the American Red Cross, where I was a manager for them for several years. And I managed large scale disaster operations. During that time, I worked with and led a lot of collaborative teams of people who came from all sorts of different backgrounds with different skill sets and different education. But we were all united in the one goal, which was to help our communities recover after a disaster. And not only that, but build them better and stronger than they were before. And uh, one of the things that I just want to talk about during my time there is that when we were planning after disasters happened, we would put together these great plans and then we'd get out into the field, and the communities were never what they were on paper, and life was never as neat as it is in a boardroom. So, what often ended up happening was, instead of being a manager, I ended up as a translator. I would talk to the people who were making the plans, and I would describe what we were doing out in the field and what we were seeing and hearing. And they would then take that information and be able to actually make decisions and come up with ideas that would allow those communities to rebuild better than before. So why am I actually bothering to talk about all of this? Well, because it's very much applicable to what I see happening in the quantum and networking and cyber world today. We have a lot of common ground, but we don't always talk to each other that well. And for quantum computing to truly move forward, it's really going to take a collaborative effort and multiple uh, people from all these different disciplines to help get it out of the lab and into the real world. So that's what we're going to focus on this session. It's going to explore how quantum and classical computing is not rivals. I know we also often see those graphics where it's quantum versus classical, but in reality, the two complement each other really well. Quantum is great with the probabilistic stuff. Classic loves its deterministic information, and they already have a lot of common ground. We just have to start talking about it better. So that's what we're going to do today. And right now, we're going to focus on why everyone should care. Then we'll actually focus on what a hybrid network is. It's usually more commonly referred to as a quantum network. But when you think about it, and as we'll learn, it really does involve parts from both quantum and classical computers. And then we're going to talk about how these hybrid networks actually can potentially hold the key to solving some of quantum's biggest challenges today. So we're going to jump right into it. So if you have a networking or even a cybersecurity background, why should you care about quantum? Well, just look at the rollout of AI. AI adoption was implemented before it was secure in any way, shape, or form, and it's caused a lot of problems. Over 97% of AI related breaches that happened in the past year had no actual company policy or governance. And it's honestly resulted in a lot of headaches and lost resources, lost money. We've had data leaks, we've had information misuse, and even though it doesn't get talked about as much, it's also caused a very large strain on our infrastructure, from its energy consumption to its need for very high bandwidth. Um, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned here because quantum's at a similar stage right now. We're very much focused on performance and making it better. We're not so much focused on is it secure or what kind of resources are we using. Uh, but it's already starting to cause potential waves. We already see the need for better security with post-quantum encryption and the rise of harvest now, decrypt later attacks, where you have bad faith actors that are stealing data that is encrypted now, but are hoping that down the line they'll be able to use quantum technology to decrypt it. And we already know that there's going to be potential network issues with timing and quantum's need for low latency. So what can we do with this information? Well, rather than sit around and wait for it to become a problem, the best thing to do is, actually get ready for it. We have the time, and we really should be focused on reinforcing the networks that we need, because quantum does depend on our classical infrastructure. Um, we use our classical systems for control, synchronization, feedback. It's how we set up our problems. It's how we operate our quantum computers. And we do that using components that we're very familiar with: servers, routers. These are all classical computer parts that we've been using for decades now. And on top of that, because most people, if you're using something like IBM's quantum systems, are using uh, cloud infrastructure, we're also adding a layer of networking and security that needs to be paid attention to, because that's also providing stability, and it has the potential to make these hybrid systems scalable. So if we're going to build resilience now, there's a few different areas that we can focus on. Timing and synchronization is going to be a big one, and this is an area that IT and networking people should absolutely be paying attention to. If we can strengthen our network timing protocol capabilities, which right now they're, for the most part, not as good as they need to be to support our quantum computing. It has the potential to revolutionize not just our quantum computers and our quantum hybrid networks, but also a lot of other classical systems such as finance, healthcare, and precision. Uh, you have a couple of different companies that are currently working on this. CERN's White Rabbit project is one that comes up a lot. There's also a company in Japan that is working on improving our timing standards. For the security folks out there, you've probably heard it before, but quantum safe encryption is absolutely a thing that you will be dealing with for the next 5 to 10 years. NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Training, the ones who decide what encryptions we should be using to keep our data safe, just released this year, 2025, several approved post-quantum cryptography, thank you, algorithms that can now be implemented. And those are the migrations for that does not happen overnight. We're still working with encryption sometimes that we shouldn't be using, and it's been years. So for anyone who is currently in the cybersecurity field or is looking to go into it, it's absolutely something to pay attention to, because moving from one encryption algorithm to another is not as simple as pulling a switch. But it also comes with some good news, because we're also developing quantum key distribution and crypto agility at the same time. And those actually hold the answer to several very persistent issues we've been seeing in cybersecurity. And then, last but not least, for the software engineers and coders out there, we have the hybrid orchestration tools. So Qiskit, AWS Racket, Azure Quantum, these are all tools that are being developed to help communicate our classical systems with our quantum ones. And it's not just something for our software people. For anyone who's ever had to do something with a network, it's good to at least get a passing familiarity with tools and how they operate on the network. And now is the time. So, my message to you is really, your roles aren't going to disappear, but they're definitely going to evolve. as our networks and our security systems uh, become a hybrid system of both our classical and quantum. So we've covered why our IT people and our networking people and our security people should be paying attention to quantum. But I know a lot of you are actually more on the quantum end of the spectrum. Why should you care about IT networking and cybersecurity? Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from classical computing because end of the day, every quantum operation runs using classical controls, synchronization, and feedback. Um, and it's still always going to depend, at least for the foreseeable future, on those classical components. Not to mention, there are lessons that we can learn from of the decades that we spent developing the classical systems. And we can take those lessons and use them as a guide as we scale and secure our quantum computers and our hybrid networks. Because building a strong network infrastructure, it isn't just about supporting our quantum computers, it's also how we're going to get quantum out of the lab. And one of the things that we used to say in the field is don't reinvent the wheel. Um, you just maybe need to tweak it a bit to suit your needs. So, as you can see here, I posted a picture. We've used the wheel for hundreds and hundreds of years. It may have changed what it looks like, but it's still doing the same basic thing. And that's what we're going to do with these hybrid networks is they're going to change what they look like and they're going to have some fancy new bells and whistles, but in the end they're still going to be all about connecting different systems. So we don't have to come up with a completely new technology in order to integrate quantum into our current classical systems. And honestly, that's a great thing for several reasons. Because when you think about it, what is this hybrid network we keep talking about? Uh, it's an integration that uses our classical infrastructure. So think your fiber optic cables, your routers, satellites, control systems like we've talked about with software integration. And we're combining that with quantum hardware and channels that can generate and transmit qubits. Usually we're talking, when we're in regards to hybrid networks, entangled photons. Um, I know quantum computers tend to use different types of qubits, but when we talk about a hybrid network, it's important to keep in mind that we're generally referring to photon qubits because they work very well with fiber optic cables that we already have in place. Fiber optic cables, for those of you who aren't familiar with networking, transmit data by flashes of light, and photons are just light particles at the end of the day. So it works really, really well already. Um, and then um, the one thing that makes it difficult when we're talking about hybrid networks is there's no single blueprint for a hybrid network. I can't show you a nice picture of this is what a hybrid network looks like because designs are vary by hardware, by platform, by research goal, and it's currently a little bit all over the place. Depending on a research group's goal, um, or aim, there's so many different ways that we can integrate quantum into our current network. We're still exploring the best way to do that. So while it's exciting and there really is no limit on how we're exploring this, it does create a couple of challenges. The lack of standardization can make it challenging, as you can see, to diagram a typical hybrid network because there is no such thing as a typical quantum hybrid network. And it also limits interoperability. So when we want to go work with another group or lab that might have their own quantum computer, uh, it's difficult because the technologies might not play very nice with each other. For those of you who like their history or have been around for a while, I like to compare it a lot to what it was like when ARPANET first came out. So ARPANET, for those of you who are familiar, was the precursor to the internet. And before we had the nice interconnected internet that we all know and love today, we had ARPANET back in the 70s and 80s. And it was very similar to what we're seeing with quantum research labs and networks today, actually. Very few standards, limited interoperability, and many experiments to see what worked, what didn't. And, you know, we got some uh, interesting things out of it. But it's another great example of lessons that we can learn from how classical computing and networks have evolved over time. And it's absolutely something that we can look at to help guide us as we develop those quantum hybrid networks of today. But as much as hybrid networks can vary, there are some common themes amongst all of them. So the big one, the core components that I like to think of as forming the communication backbone are the classical link controls, because again, anything having to do with quantum, we still use classical controls to interact with our quantum infrastructure. So we see classical controls used to manage the timing, routing, synchronization, and error correction. Um, and then you'll have the quantum channels. And these are usually the photons, either in fiber or free space, carrying quantum states or entanglement. Another great thing about photon qubits is that they are relatively stable and can be used at room temperature. So you do not need specialized environments in which to generate these qubits and have them work. They also can travel the entire length of a fiber optic cable. Now, the problem becomes fiber optic cables will only go so far. And that's where you get into the integration and extension of a hybrid network. So, what you will get when you run out of a fiber optic cable, which usually goes 100 kilometers or so, is a quantum repeater. And this is designed to extend the range of quantum signals by storing and re-emitting the entanglement. And we've had some pretty good success with this. Quantum hybrid networks are a thing that we do see out of the lab and in real life today, actually. And they have networks that stretch all the way from Boston down to DC. Where it becomes tricky and what we're currently researching and trying to develop is photon qubits don't really play nicely with our quantum computing qubits. So our superconducting qubits, the trapped ions, etc., they don't mesh well. So when our goal becomes transferring data between, for lack of a better term, data between one quantum computer and the next using these hybrid networks, we need something to act as a translator and convert those optical network qubits into something those computational qubits can understand. And this is something that is very cutting edge. The articles I were referring to was actually published this past April in 2025. Um, it was out of the University of Chicago. And what I found interesting was they actually reused an error correcting code, because that's the big downside to transducers, is that like quantum computers, you do have a lot of error correction when it comes to translations between the uh, photon qubits and our computational qubits. So, anyhow, these the scientists who were developing these transducers actually ended up using an error correcting code that was developed 25 years ago. And it was actually developed to correct a different type of error. Um, but they found out that it worked for their transducer just as well. And I really liked that concept, because sometimes I know in quantum computing, the quantum algorithms, we spend so much time working and developing, and a lot of the time it just seems to go nowhere. And it's a good reminder that it's worth revisiting the things that in our eyes didn't work, because maybe it didn't work for what it was developed. But there are a ton of examples throughout history of something that was developed for one purpose and was completely unsuitable and deemed a failure, until someone came along and said, hey, you know what? That actually works really well for this thing over here. Um, and uh, was an example of a failure, but I do like how it's actually how we came up with binary that we use for classical computing uh, uh, now. It actually, for those of you who aren't history buffs, uh, the idea of binary and punch cards was something that was borrowed from the textile industry, and we got from people who like to tap lace. So that's your little history lesson for today, is we got our classical computing systems from people who wanted to make lace at a much faster pace. Um, so moving on, we have our integration and our extensions, but none of this is really going to go anywhere without our orchestration layer. And that's always going to be some sort of software linking the classical and quantum resources. For example, again, IBM Quantum, AWS Bracket, Azure Quantum. I know Cisco, actually, it's not up here, but Cisco's working, and they just, beginning of October, had a whole presentation on the software and a stack that they had developed to work and integrate with their quantum hybrid networks. So um, now, why am I going on about hybrid networks? Well, because they have the potential to help with some of quantum computing's biggest challenges today. One that we see a lot is scaling. Current quantum computers are small and are very limited by qubit counts, error rates, and hardware constraints. If we can build hybrid networks that allow us to link smaller quantum processors, we then have the ability to have distributed quantum computing. And that is a goal that is very much in development and being looked at keenly by several different companies, for very good reason. Because uh, while it's a fun challenge to try and build these monolithic quantum computing machines, when you think about how we have developed our classical computers, um, we've become more and more reliant on data centers where we distribute the workload over many machines. And this is for several reasons. It improves scalability. We can add and subtract as needed. It allows for modular upgrades. And it's also much more resource efficient. When you think about the amount of power and electricity all of these data centers use, if we can scale up and scale down to the problems as needed so we don't have to keep all of these machines running all the time, just the ones that we need, we're being much more efficient and much more green at the same time. And the picture here is actually something I pulled from Cisco because one of their very determined stated goals is to build such a data center that is basically made up of various quantum computers that they can then hook together and you would be able to access right from your home. So the next challenge that quantum hybrid networks can help us with is stability. Um, One of the big challenges in quantum computing is decoherence. It limits qubit lifetime, and uh, we all know certain quantum qubit states decay fast, and they can lose the information before calculations are complete. However, there have been several studies and test cases that show that hybrid networks can successfully be used to transfer or offload quantum states before they decay to new qubits in a different quantum computer. So it's not only a theory, but it has been proven that it can be done right now, limited capacity. But it's very exciting because some of a lot of these problems that we or algorithms that we weren't able to test because the states were decaying before we could finish, we now have a solution on how we can extend that life. However, there's still caveats. You need reliable connectivity and very, 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 can't stress this enough, very precise timing to extend usable coherence. So this goes back to why knowing your networking is so important because synchronization standards really could help here. And we're absolutely going to have to up our game when it comes to our network time protocol, um, which, if you're not familiar with what NTP, its Network Time Protocol, stands for, it's basically the basis on which most of your computer runs. If you've ever had an issue with your computer because it won't connect well or it's acting funky, one of the things to check with is your clock set right? Because if the time is off on your computer, it throws a lot of different things off. It's essential for security. It's essential for your computer to be able to synchronize um, with a lot of automated processes. And all of this, it kind of is one of the major underpinnings of most of our network. Um, However, while our current NTP protocol is very, very effective for our classical needs, it won't meet our quantum needs. So there are, like I've mentioned previously, a couple of um, research groups that are trying to develop the next gen NTP. Tech is one of them. There's also the NTT Research Group from Japan, or I'm sorry, NTT Research Center from Japan. And they are currently at the forefront of distributed quantum computing. And this isn't only going to affect quantum hybrid networks and quantum computers. If we can develop an even more precise uh, NTP protocol, things like financial transactions, healthcare data, uh, any type of synchronization that relies on very, very precise measurements and time, it's all going to be affected. So it's not just classical that's giving to quantum, it's quantum that's giving to classical at the same time. Um, and in the end, um, you know, we will have longer logical uptime, hopefully more stable computations, and even improved error resilience, because we'll be able to better distribute and manage our quantum orchestration software. So the last major challenge that hybrid networks can help with isn't so much a problem that quantum has, that quantum computing has caused. And that problem is security. So, quantum computers, while it's not a reality, they do threaten current existing encryption. And a lot of this gets generalized. It's not all encryption, it's just certain types of encryption. But it's enough that we have seen a rise of uh, the harvest now, encrypt later attacks, where you have people who will uh, basically eavesdrop on networks, which are fairly easy to do and it's very hard to detect, um, and steal encrypted data. And their plan is to decrypt it later once quantum capabilities mature. Um, and this is where our quantum hybrid networks actually offer a solution. So they do this in a couple of ways. A quantum hybrid, usually it's referred to as quantum networks in this case, but it really is still a hybrid network, enable us to use what's called quantum key distribution. And while the protocol is there's different types of ways to do quantum key distribution, and there's actually going to be another presentation if you're interested in this during our conference. I'm looking forward to that one. But the main takeaway from it is that it allows for the detection of eavesdropping. Uh, so being able to detect eavesdropping is a big thing. Right now, our classical counterparts, we don't really have a way because most eavesdropping is passive and therefore is very, very hard to detect. Um, so not only does it address the harvest now, decrypt later threats, because it makes it hard to, makes it impossible to eavesdrop without being detected. It's not that you can't eavesdrop. That's something that gets misconstrued a lot. It's just, it's hard to eavesdrop without being detected. Um, and it also allows us a way to provide a secure key exchange that would be immune from further quantum decryption attacks. Uh, Key exchange is getting more into the nitty-gritty of security protocols, but when people talk about quantum key distribution, public key distribution is another word that you're going to hear a lot. It's basically the process we use to encrypt data and securely transfer it only to intended recipients. Um, so because the quantum channels that are established using these hybrid networks are so fragile, it doesn't allow for eavesdropping, but one of the vulnerabilities we had when exchanging these keys that would allow us to decode whatever they encrypted was it would be intercepted by a malicious actor. Generally, this is known as a man-in-the-middle attack, and used to decrypt whatever came later. Because of the fragile state, same thing with the eavesdropping. you can't you can't do a man in the middle attack because it's just detectable. You there's no way to intercept a quantum key without being um, detected, and it's not that it's uh, you just go through it with anyway. You'd still have to shut it off and start all over again. But this way, you and only the intended recipient are the ones who are going to be able to decrypt the data and read the data as intended. So this is really important because as we gear up to try and shift our encryptions in various different layers in our APIs, in our networks, in our security protocols to a post-quantum encryption level. These provide ways that we can for data that needs to be really, really secure and absolutely can not fall in the hands of malicious actors that might decode it 5, 10 years later. Think state secrets, important identity data, uh, healthcare data, things like that. This allows us a way to transmit that data because I don't want to go too in depth here, but the uh, the transfer of moving to this new encryption standard for post quantum is probably going to take for major enterprises that are going to throw a lot of resources at it about 5 years. It's not an overnight thing, but I recently watched a AWS webinar on it that focused on what they're doing for large enterprise clients, and even they came out and said, even with the best, on your own, 5 years, if they're helping you and you're going to throw a lot of money at it, 1 to 2 to 3, it's not an overnight process. And while we haven't cracked our current day encryption, it's definitely on. It's definitely coming in probably I would say the next 5, 10 years by best estimates. And that's the point when you want to start inquiring to your doctor's office, have they updated their security protocols lately? Um, so that's all I have for you. In closing, when we talk about collaboration and integration, we're not talking about replacement or pushing people out of the way. We're talking about roles evolving because quantum is definitely growing and making breakthroughs every day. But classical computing is not standing still. And just as much as quantum can learn from classical, classical can learn, I think, a lot from quantum as well. But we need to foster good and strong collaboration between the fields. So, for all you quantum people out there, I would encourage you to take time to learn how networks, timing, and security really work because you never know when it might come up in your work. Cisco, IBM, both have some really great free courses in this. And for networking and cybersecurity, I would encourage you to explore quantum basics and hybrid orchestration tools, um, such as the conference we're attending now or IBM's Qiskit. It is UNESCO's quantum year, so there's a lot of things going on, and now really is the best time to get into quantum, I think. Um, but either way, the goal should be let's build together. And when we're building, we always want to test, connect, and share what we learn. Uh, so just because I know I referenced, and if you're like me, you're always looking for new information. Here are some of the articles that I referenced. And then I also just have general references to different quantum repositories that I often refer back to. So that is all that I have. Um,
Thank you,
and
Tabitha.
if I
It's
can pull it up.
it's
Uh,
really interesting all you can tell us. And now we have some questions of the public.
mhm.
And first, what specific skills do you recommend IT professionals develop to adapt to hybrid systems?
That's a great question. I would say IT systems, we like to talk about them in terms of generalization, but a lot of the times people will specialize. Uh, what I would suggest is start with understanding if you understand your networks, is start with understanding your quantum basics. Um, every time I think I've wrapped my head around what uh, people are doing in quantum and quantum networks or hybrid networks, I like to call them, because I think it fosters collaboration and the idea that it really is a collaboration between classical and quantum. I learned something new. I think I had to change this presentation 7 or 8 times because I was fact checking myself constantly. And there's so many breakthroughs happening right now that it's just hard to keep up. So if anything I said is out of date, I apologize. It's just this past October, so many breakthroughs happened. Um, but to understand quantum networks specifically, I actually really do like Aliro networking. It was up in my resources slides. They have some absolutely great webinars and resources that really do a deep dive into different types of hybrid networks and how the different types of ways that we're integrating quantum and classical hardware. And then Cisco for a bigger overview as well of where I think the hybrid network is going to end up.
Thank you, Tabitha.
Mhm.
Thank you for share us the information about Cisco and all the other companies who um, us study and involved in this area. Have had another question. How annealing is using in K distribution?
In key
In key
distribution.
distribution.
Um, I'm gonna be 100% honest. I am not 100% sure what um, uh, that is referring to. I have to be honest. Key distribution. There's a few different ways we can do quantum key distribution. There's four I can think of off the top of my head. And all will do, and I'm not sure if we're talking about quantum key distribution or public key distribution, asymmetric key distribution, symmetric key distribution. There's a lot of, it's like I mentioned before, it's very essential in how we protect and transmit encrypted data. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, depending. Um, I'm trying to think of what's a great there's a couple of really good overviews on key distribution that you can find on YouTube or quantum key distribution. Oh, hold on one second. Let me just pull up my resource slide. Um, I would say the best one is hmm, I probably would start with NIST, because and see who's referencing NIST. NIST is what sets all our, in the United States, let me be clear, um, standards for when it comes to security, regulation, encryption, and the like. IEEE is also a great resource on, and papers, articles that generally refer back to those organizations are legit and have been doing their research.
Thank you, Tabitha. Have another question.
Mhm.
Um, what concrete steps can companies or academic institutions take today to begin integrating and experimenting with hybrid architecture safely and efficiently?
Okay, that's a great question. So there are a couple of to actually experiment with hybrid architecture, hands-on might be a little bit difficult. There are outside of a research lab, there are a couple of hybrid networks that are in use today. Um, I mentioned the one that runs from Boston to Washington. Uh, this past October, like I mentioned, Cisco also came out with a demonstration of its new quantum network and how that works. They had a whole 2 day presentation on how they showed off a whole quantum hybrid network chip. And they're in the process of developing actually a uh, orchestration software based on Qiskit. So for those of us who are familiar with Qiskit, Cisco is also a great place to look at, because they are taking Qiskit and using it to integrate it into their own quantum technology. Um, and I would say, and look at the webinars out there. It's hard for me to say, but then again, I focus on the hybrid networks that use fiber optics. And I do have to give a shout out because honestly, you can also create hybrid networks using satellites. There's been experiments using hybrid networks with drones. And honestly, I just didn't have the time to go into all the different ways we're creating quantum networks. Um, so again, I had some resources that I referred to, and I would absolutely start there. But again, Aliro does do a pretty good overview on the different types, and they're also good at referring different research that's going on.
Thank you, Tabitha. Have
Mhm.
another question. Uh, what impact will learning quantum security concepts and quantum networking have on the traditional practice of security, especially regarding protocols, auditing, and infrastructure design?
So, for one thing, it's going to keep you in your job, um, because it's going to be the biggest, and it's going to net you a job probably. Even now, I had mentioned large enterprises are looking at shifting their current encryption standards to a post quantum encryption. And that's not something that's going to be done overnight. And companies that don't have as many resources, it's going to take them longer. So anyone who is looking to get into the cybersecurity field, it's honestly an excellent area because it is something that the field will be dealing with for the next several years, if not longer, because we've only have these four post quantum encryptions that have been approved by NIST. And the thing to remember with that is while they've been approved, they haven't actually been put to the test. So it might be a couple of years from now, we're using completely different encryption standards. There was actually an article that I read, and this focused more in Southeast Asian Pacific. So, for all of you who are in India, China, in that region, they think that quantum cryptography and cybersecurity dealing with quantum is going to be one of, if not the fastest growing sectors of cybersecurity for that area, because of the rise of the harvest now, decrypt later, and uh, it's just really a huge area. So if you want to get into cybersecurity at all, it's a must know. And it really does surprise me how little it comes up in my classes, and even just everyday articles about cybersecurity. As for networking, I generally refer back to the struggle a lot of network and sysadmins had when the AI launched. We were unprepared for it. We didn't think it was going to grow as big as it did, as fast as it did, and it really did create some issues, both with keeping up with the bandwidth demand, and with the power consumption of our data centers. And you saw a lot of issues because of that. And any good network technician should know what's being used on their networks. If you do not understand the hardware technology that your network is using, then how can you call yourself a system admin?
Thank you, Tabitha. Have another question. If it's
Mhm.
no, how can we in Latin America and developing countries become more involved in the development of
Mhm.
this new quantum communication infrastructure?
Okay, that's a great question. And I touched on it a little. Um, and I think it goes back to, and this is one of the reasons why I'm really happy that when we're developing these quantum hybrid networks, we're using existing infrastructure, because it allows countries that might not have the funding, the resources, or the existing infrastructure as some other countries. It gives them a chance to keep up, honestly, because they're not splitting resources between, oh, I need a quantum network as opposed to a classical network. No, I need this hybrid network. And it actually um, uh, helps advocate for it, because now it's not just one system it's supporting, it's multiple systems it's supporting. In addition to that, while I focused more on hybrid networks that deal with fiber optics, there are, like I mentioned, hybrid networks that actually use satellites, drones. And the great things about satellites is they cover a large amount of territory. And you have satellites up there that'll cover a third of the world. And they work. It's proven to work. So just because you're in a Latin American country does not mean you're going to be left behind. Um, there's a lot of opportunities out there. And like I said, the great thing is if you already have the basic underlying classical technology infrastructure, you're set for the next step, because we all, for the most part, are still waiting for the quantum hybrid technology to still get out of the labs. Cisco even is just looking this past month for design partners to test real world applications. So, reach out to Cisco if you have a good case, because they're eager, and Cisco's actually very good um, at collaborating with a lot of countries. And they had a huge initiative recently through their Cisco Netacad in Latin America. I know I read a couple of articles about that recently. So they're always looking to collaborate. with more than one type of country or group, I would say, because you can't really test how well something's going to work if you only, like I referred at the beginning, test it in the nice, pristine uh, boardroom. You want to test it everywhere you can because that's how you get a good product.
Thank you, Tabitha. Have another question.
Mm-hmm.
Only wait 1 minute, please.
Sure.
Hey, Tabitha, it was a wonderful lecture. So we have three important questions over here about the public, especially for Latin America. The
Mm-hmm.
first one is, how important do you think open source collaboration and community-driven projects are for regions like Latin America to gain visibility and impact in the global quantum ecosystem?
I think it's very important. And this goes back to my time with the Red Cross because I worked on teams with people who were from all around the world, all different education backgrounds, all different skill sets. I worked with people who couldn't even turn on a computer, to people who could honestly build like computers in their sleep. And they all had something to offer. They all offered a different perspective because they all came from a different place. So even if you gave them all the same problem, they'd all come back with a different answer a lot of the times. And it's not necessarily that there's one right answer, it's what best fits the situation. So when we talk about um, people from different countries, different backgrounds, it's honestly something that I would wear proudly because it means you might see something or you might have an experience or perspective that no one else on the team you are working with will have. And you might think of things, and even if you think it's obvious to you, it might not be to other people because they don't share your experiences and your background. And that's one of the wonderful things I love about quantum too, is it really is a global community, and everyone I talk to is always excited to hear, well, what's your take on this? And you know that's true for Latin America, but it's also true from people from every country, every background, and it's really something that should be embraced.
Thank you so much. I think so. The second question is completely relational about you said. And this here you could propose one initiative for Latin America to accelerate his participation in the quantum classical convergence. What will it be? Education, infrastructure, or policy?
For me, I am always going to be an advocate for education. However, you know, some how do you get better education? You get it through good policy. And how do you deliver that education? You get it through better infrastructure. How do you get better infrastructure? You get it through policy. It's all wrapped up. And we really should always, when we're looking to improve something, sometimes step back and look at the whole picture because, you know, sometimes we just have to compromise. It might be a cop out, but maybe it's not. We get the best education program, but we get a little bit of everything, and a little bit of everything adds up after a while.
Okay. The other question is, many young people here are passionate, but sometimes feel isolated and underrepresented in global test discussion. What would you tell them about finding their voice and place in this fast-moving field?
Oh boy. So I would count myself amongst those people because as a student in IT networking and security, quantum doesn't come up a lot, and my school does not have any type of quantum program. So it's very much I have to reach out to the online community. Um, Luckily, everyone I have talked to in the quantum community just seems very eager to talk to me. So I've connected with people on LinkedIn, through YouTube comments. And sometimes I'm the one who's drawing people into the quantum world. Oh, you don't know anything about quantum? That's okay. Let me tell you about it. Because by educating other people about quantum, I'm also educating myself. And I deepen my understanding so it allows me to better explain it. So if you're feeling isolated or like you don't have a quantum community that you want to reach out and touch, start your own club or start your own community group. The great thing about quantum is it touches so many disciplines. I focus today on IT networking and security, but we've heard people on how it was going to impact finance, the life sciences, weather services, math, computer science. Like, pick a discipline and you can analytics. Like I veered at one point into analytics just for fun. I don't know what I was thinking. But a lot of my background in analytics has actually helped me understand the quantum. So you never know when you're going to find a fellow quantum enthusiast. And it's a great opportunity to go and make your own community.
Okay, great. We had another question for the public. This is for Vishal. As post-quantum cryptography algorithms aims to resist attacks for quantum computers, randomness remains a critical foundation
Mhm.
for secure key generation. From your perspective, how can implement quantum random number generators, which produce true entropy for quantum phenomena, enhance the overall security and trustworthiness for PQC systems compared to classical ones? Do you see this as a necessary step for future cryptographic infrastructure, especially in India contexts where companies like QNU Labs are advancing about QRNG technology? Yeah, this is a
So
lot of
I,
questions.
I do see it in the chat. It's a great question because true randomness really is key when it comes to making something uh, uncrackable, unpredictable, and predictability is what our quantum computers are going to do so well. Um, from my current understanding of quantum keys, they have their own special, unique quantum way that doesn't rely on random number generators in order to generate the quantum keys. Which there might be a nuance that I haven't learned yet. I will fully admit. But you did hit on something that's really important, which is the random number generator, because I think it can be applied to other areas of security where randomness really is key in being unpredictable and therefore undetectable in terms of evading penetration attacks, bad faith actors, and making um, uh, a more robust, secure system.
Okay, there is another question. Can quantum forecasting and show it on the bucket?
Uh,
Okay, can quantum forecasting and show it on the bucket?
I'm not sure that I understand the question. Um,
Yeah.
Sorry. I mean, feel free to reach out to me, and I would be more than happy to talk to you about it and get a better understanding of what you're trying to ask. Because it's not just quantum networks that I'm interested in, but it's just the one that applies to me most right now. So, uh, but with my background in disaster response, weather played such a critical part, that anything having to do with bettering forecasting models and predictability both helps us with uh, preparing for responses, but also uh, with rebuilding efforts and scaling up responses as well. So I know I'm deviating there, but it just goes to show how quantum really does touch everything when we think about how we can apply it. Because life is very, very random.
Okay, finally, could you share a message to encourage for Latin American students, especially for young women in STEM, who are
Mhm.
exploring how their skills in cybersecurity or networking could contribute to the quantum future?
Can you just say that first part again? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Finally, could you share a message for encourage for Latin American students, especially for young women in
Mhm.
STEM, who are exploring how the skill in cybersecurity or networking could contribute to the quantum
Okay.
future?
So when I started as a manager with the Red Cross, I was 23 years old. I looked like I was about 19. Yet I was there representing the American Red Cross in our communities, in meetings with people who were easily 3 times my age, mostly male, um, usually from a very gung ho background: fire, police, military. And not only did I have to cross a generational divide, I had to deal with knowledge gaps as well. Um, and one of the things I have found joy in as I've explored uh, networking and cybersecurity is that uh, it really is a very welcoming community. Um, and then, and I've never yet encountered um, issues because I'm a woman. It might be because I'm a student and my lack of knowledge, but not because I am female. That's not always going to be true. I know that. But what I have learned over the years from the Red Cross and just in life is that it's usually not about you. If someone is giving you a hard time, if they're making your life difficult, it's usually a them problem. And you really just kind of have to stay in your lane and be true to yourself, because end of the day, if you do, if you stay true to your values and you stay true to your goals, and you know you do the best you can, then win, fail, or fall somewhere in between, you can say you tried, and you can hold your head up proudly, and there is nothing to be ashamed about. um, and you just, haters are gonna hate. like and you just gotta have to let them, because I just like to think, oh, they're jealous. Because yeah, I've been told that I'm intimidating, I'm bossy, I need to tone it down. Time and time again, I've had to give ideas to male colleagues just because it was more important for that idea to be heard than for me to get credit for it. But by sticking true to my values, end of the day, I sleep okay at night, and I'm happy with myself, and I know my value and my skills. It's not easy though. Not always. There are times when you go to bed and you want to cry your eyes out, but uh, you know, one of the things that my father actually said to me: "Is it going to matter in a week? Is it going to matter in a year? 5 years. And that really does help put difficult situations, girls, boys, anything in between, in perspective. Is this whatever I'm going through going to matter a year from now? And that can help, hopefully.
Thank you, Tabitha. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. And thank you for a second invitation to, uh, to share all you know for doing all this year for the Latin America community and Mexico as well. Thank you again for the QB Hub team. And yeah, thank you so much.
I'm just thank you for inviting me. This is very important for me as well. So I just my chance, and thank you for allowing me to participate, because it truly is meaningful for me to be able to share my perspectives and feel like a valued member of the community.